أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. This, what I'm going to say really reverts back to the extraordinary series of discourses which the Shaykh Abdalhaqq gave in San Antonio, which were then put together in his book, Root Islamic Education. And that came out of his desire to see what the book and the Sunnah really were, because all the Muslims, as he's told us, all the Muslims referred to the book and the Sunnah, but how did they come about? How was it possible to find what they really were, the book and the Sunnah? And as you know, we became Muslim in Morocco, and therefore we adopted the madhab of that place, because those were the people we became Muslim with, and that was the Maliki madhab. But Shaykh Abdalhaqq wasn't satisfied with that, and in his search for knowledge, he wanted to find out what were the book and the Sunnah, how can they be put into practice? And his search led him back to the very thing that we had in the first place, which was the ongoing transmission of the amal of the people of Medina, as we took it from those people we knew in Morocco when we became Muslim. And this led me, once this position had been made clear to us by the Shaykh, it led me to reflecting on it and wondering why there was these various different understandings of the book and Sunnah and how that had come about. And of course the four basic understandings that we have are the four madhahib. The madhab of Imam Abu Hanifah, the madhab of Imam Malik, the madhab of Imam Shafi, and the madhab of Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal. So I was reflecting on how is it that these four schools exist, and what do they represent in themselves? How are they? Because what are they? And on reflection, what I saw was that they were all different methods of coming to what is the book and the Sunnah. They were all different methods of understanding what is the book and the Sunnah. And then I thought, well, how do they differ one from the other? So and the first of them, of course, is the first in historical terms is the madhab of these four, is the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifah. And the point about Imam Abu Hanifah was that he was not in Medina, he was in Iraq. And his school developed in Iraq. And the thing about Iraq was that very few companions traveled from Medina and settled in Iraq. There were great ones among them, among whom of course was Sayyidina Ali Karramullah himself and Abdullah ibn Masud, but the number of them was in fact very few. What that meant was, in real terms, was that the people of Iraq had very little access to the Sunnah, because there were very few exemplars of the Sunnah that came to them. And so the Iraqi school developed. And what the Iraqi school was that meant was that you took the knowledge that you had of the sources. Of course, the knowledge of Qur'an was there, and the knowledge of the Sunnah which they had. And of course, in Iraq as well, there were many new situations developing continually. It was a different environment from that of Medina. And so new situations developed, and it was necessary to find solutions for these new situations and apply the book and the Sunnah to them. But of course, although the book was there, the Sunnah was very limited in that place. And so the ulama of that place developed a methodology of coming to the what was the book and the Sunnah for the situations with which they were confronted. And that became known as the school of Rai, of opinion. And opinion meant that you took all the knowledge that you could, and then you worked out a solution according to the knowledge that you had, which would then apply and could solve the situation which was in front of you. And this school was embodied by and exemplified to the highest possibility by Imam Abu Hanifah, rahimahullah ta'ala. And if you study his life, you will see that there have been few people ever with such a scintillating intellect as he had. And it's extraordinary the way, given the limited access he had to the Sunnah, the way he solved the situations which were put in front of him. But it was solved by the use of his intellect, putting his reason to the problem in front of him. So this is the basis of the Iraqi school. Then the second in history is the school of Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. Now this is a different way of coming at the book and the Sunnah to that which was applied by Imam Abu Hanifah. Because Imam Malik, as we know, lived in Medina, and as we know, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu made sure that the companions stayed there, particularly the companions with knowledge. And so the knowledge, and so the whole body of the deen was kept whole in Medina. And as is acknowledged by all the ulama of early Islam, no bid'ah, nothing, no innovation entered Medina during the first 3 generations. That is the generation of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, their followers, the tabi'un, and their followers, the tabi'un, one of whom was Imam Malik radiallahu anhu. So up until the time of Imam Malik, nothing extraneous to the deen entered into the environment in which they were. In other words, what Imam Malik received and what he handed on to us, to his students, and down to our own time in the Muwatta, in his great work, the Muwatta, was nothing other than the whole body of the deen that had been that had come down through those 3 generations to him in Medina al-Munawwara, without anything added and nothing taken away. And so we have the statement of his teacher Rabia, who said, the 1,000 from the 1,000, what was it he said?
Taking from
1,000, yeah, 1,000 to take, 1,000 taking from 1,000 is preferable from the one to the one, because the one to the one will take the deen out of your hands, even if it is sound. This is referring to the transmission to isnad, to the transmission of hadith. And so the method of Imam Malik was to take what was there and pass it on, as it had come down freshly, as it were, fresh right from the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, without any change. So it was the deen as it came. Then the third, in historical terms, the third method was that developed by Imam Shafi'i, radiallahu anhu, rahimahullah ta'ala. Now he was born in Mecca, where he studied the Qur'an, And then he came to Medina and sat as the student of Imam Malik as a young man, as a youth in fact, and he took on and learnt the Muwatta by heart. He then went on to Iraq, where he studied under the students of Imam Abu Hanifah, particularly Ahmed Shaybani. And then after that he traveled to Yemen, and then after that he traveled and he ended his life in Egypt. Now, I was reflecting on what it was that made his method different, and what happened with him was that he traveled to various places and he found that divergent opinions were being expressed in different places, and in his understanding there was a danger that the deen would become dispersed and and different ideas about it would become apparent in different places. And so he devised an extraordinarily brilliant system for preventing any further dispersal of the knowledge of the book and the Sunnah. And in order to do this, he developed a system of textual analysis, a way of looking at the ayats of the Qur'an and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in order to stop the actions of the deen becoming wider and wider and more apart. And so he developed a system for extracting actions from texts. This is the point. So he developed a system for taking actions out of the texts. There are some interesting examples of the way this works, which have come down to us through his madhab down to our own time. For instance, there is it says in one of the ayats about in the Qur'an, it says that if you touch women, then you must purify yourself, using the word in Arabic mas. Now this understanding among the people of Medina and the people of Iraq was as well actually was understood to have a sexual connotation. But the word itself must simply means touching. And so taking the methodology of Imam Shafi rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, well, the word means touch, therefore if you touch a woman you have to purify yourself. In other words, taking the word itself as the source of the action, not the passed down transmission of what in fact it meant. Another example is it says in the Quran about wudu in one point, biru'usikum, wiping your head with using the participle bi in front of it. Now this can mean part of, and so in the Shafi madhab it's sufficient just to wipe part of your head, although the practice of the first Muslims was in fact to wipe over the whole head. But because the word means bi, then the textual possibility was that it meant part of it. So this is the way, sort of the way that this system worked. But there is no doubt that we owe to this extraordinary system which he developed, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, we owe to him the preservation of our deen down to the present time, because it was by using this methodology that the ulama of Islam preserved the deen as it had been passed down in this way. And so the actions of the deen were preserved by this methodology of Imam Shafi, and this was in fact taken on by the ulama of all of the different schools, this way of approaching texts, which was developed by Imam Shafi. And it's interesting that all of the great muhaddithin, Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Bayhaqi, Imam Abu Dawood, all of them were Shafi scholars. And the reason that they were Shafi'i scholars is because Imam Shafi'i said you have to have a text in order to act. Your actions have to be based on text. And therefore you need the texts to have the actions. And therefore a lot of the Shafi'i scholars spent their time searching out what the Prophet ﷺ had said, what he had said, in order to be able to get the maximum number of actions to have textual to have a textual basis for the maximum number of actions. And so these are the three main methodologies of how to come at the book and the Sunnah, which have come down to us, and which form the basis of these three great schools of Islam, which we come. There is also, of course, the school of Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal. Now, this is not quite the same as the others, because it isn't really a methodology. Imam Ahmed lived in Baghdad, and Baghdad was a totally different environment to the environment that the companions radiallahu anhum and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions radiallahu anhum had lived in Medina. It was a new environment. And so by the time the deen was there, everything was very different. And he said, well, how can we possibly get back to what was the beginning? How can we know what it was like then? And so what he did was he gathered together a vast number of sayings, from not only from the Prophet ﷺ, but from the companions and from anybody he could find who knew anything about the early days. He would gather together this huge, in his great work, the Musnad. And from that he built a picture, and that picture was, as it were, what he said, now this is what it was like. So it doesn't form a methodology in the same way that the other schools, the three other schools, were actual methodologies of coming at the book and the Sunnah. Now, in the context in our present context, the madhhab you have hasn't in fact got anything to do with the methodology with which it was developed. The madhhab you have depends on an accident of birth, basically, where you were born. So that if you were born in Turkey or the subcontinent, you automatically have a Hanafi. If you were born in the Far East or in Egypt, then you become Shafi'i. If you were born in North Africa, then you become, and West Africa, then you become Maliki, or certain part of the Gulf. So this is all to do. This is what the madhhabs have become. They've become a matter of geography. But the truth is that the vast majority of Muslims are in fact, by the method they take on the deen, Maliki. Because they take the deen by what they find other people doing. So they take on the deen by action. It is not necessarily the action of the people of Medina, but nevertheless the methodology is Maliki, in that they take from what they find people doing. So it's a direct transmission. The ulama, in nearly all cases, are Shafi'i because they take all their knowledge out of books. So by methodology, the majority of the ulama are in fact Shafi'i by methodology, in that they take their knowledge from books, from texts. And there is also, in fact, but there are people who apply the methodology now, in our own time. These three methodologies have their present expression in deviated forms that we should understand and know about. The Hanafi, if you like, the Iraqi method of applying reason is what is espoused by the modernists. And an example of it, for instance, is the fatwa of Muhammad Abdu allowing interest. This is a perfect example of when this Iraqi method is used in a perverted way. He said, well, the enemies of Islam have gained power over us through the use of this usury, therefore we can then take it on and get power over them, or whatever. So this is the way he used his reason wrongly, because he didn't have the knowledge or the taqwa of the original inventors, the original founders of the school. So he used the methodology wrongly, and the deen became perverted by it. Then we have another example of perversion using the Shafi'i method, if you like, the textual method, which is in the Salafi now, who take actions out of hadith without knowledge, and so they create innovations in the deen by using a methodology which they are not capable of using, because they don't have the necessary knowledge or the necessary taqwa to and this, as we know, has created fitna among the Muslims in many places, different understandings taken directly from hadith, which even, I remember the other day in Morocco, a young man came up to me and said, why you should do this, you should place your hands in qabd after ruku', because my teacher says that Albani says that, and so on and so on. So this is how the Shafi'i method has been misunderstood. And then, of course, you have even the Maliki methodology is misused by people who take on an action which is not in the deen, thinking it is from the deen because somebody else has told them about it, or because they've got it from somewhere else. So you have, we had an example last night, the actions of the people of Cape Town, which may or may not have any basis in the deen at all. So this is if you use the Maliki method wrongly. Now the point is, as I said, that the Shafi'i methodology is what has protected the deen for the last 1,000 years, and may Allah reward Imam Shafi'i for his work in enabling that to happen. But the point about it is that it was there to preserve the deen. The deen was established, and this methodology allowed the deen to be preserved, and through the ages the ulama have used this method to preserve the deen. However, that is not our situation, because we now are in a situation where the deen is no longer there to preserve. It's gone. Therefore, if people try and apply this methodology of preserving the deen in a situation where the deen doesn't really exist, it has the opposite effect. I remember once in Freiburg, when an emir had been appointed, and one of the ulama of that place came to me and said, "We can't possibly be an emir because," and then he named 35 different qualities that the emir is supposed to have, and said, "So he's not the emir." I said, all you do by that is stop anything from taking place at all. If you try and apply these criteria to a situation in which there is no deen established, then all you do is stop the deen being established. So what Shaykh Abdul-Qadir did by pointing us towards the madh'hab of the actions of the people of Medina is say, look at how it came into being in the first place. Look at how it came into being in the first place, directly from the Prophet ﷺ, in his putting into implementation of the ayats of the Qur'an in his own life and his explanation of them, and the way and the life that poured through into the deen through this methodology of the actions of the people of Medina. And this is what we have to get back to. This understanding of the deen fresh from the source, as it appeared in the actions of the people of Medina. And this is, I'm sorry if I'm putting one. this is what I understood from what the Shaykh was pointing us to. Get back to this fresh coming into life of the deen. And this is what is needed. And at various stages in history when this stultification, this rigidification has taken place, ulama have said this. And of course among them Ibn Taymiyyah, and among them Shah Wali Allah of India. Whenever this situation occurs, then they say, get back to this original picture, this original coming into being of the deen. And I can only ask Allah Tabarak that He gives us true understanding of this madhhab, of the actions of the people of Medina, and that we can bring it to life in our time as the Prophet ﷺ and the companions did in theirs.